The scope caught him at 11 p.m. I'd been testing the new night vision attachment for maybe 20 minutes, sweeping the backyard in lazy arcs, the old oak tree blooming ghostly white, the tool shed with its sagging roof, the fence line where our property met the woods. Standard stuff. The kind of mindless scanning you do when you're procrastinating on sleep because your brain won't shut off and the house feels too quiet and your wife's breathing in the next room isn't quite enough to settle the restlessness in your bones. Then the figure registered. A man. Standing at the back fence. Perfectly still. Facing the house. My body reacted before my mind caught up. Heart rate spiked. Fingers tightened on the scope housing. I counted the distance automatically. 60 yards, maybe 65, the way I used to calculate range to target in the sandbox. The green-white glow of the night vision turned him into something almost supernatural, but the posture was human. Hands in jacket pockets, ball cap pulled low. Just standing there. Watching. I didn't panic. 12 years in the army will burn that reflex out of you, replace it with something colder and more useful. I set down the scope and moved to the closet, stepping over the creaky floorboard near the dresser. Megan's breathing stayed slow and even from the bed. Good. No reason to alarm her yet. Probably a drunk who'd wandered off the road or some teenager looking for a place to smoke where his parents wouldn't find him. Probably. The Remington 870 was where I always kept it. Top shelf, shells in a box beside it. I loaded 4 rounds of double-aught buck, working the action as quietly as I could manage. The metallic click seemed deafening in the silence, but Megan didn't stir. I took the side door off the kitchen, the one with hinges I'd oiled last month for exactly this kind of situation. Call it paranoia. Call it professional habit. 14 months in this house, and I still hadn't fully settled into the idea that the war was over. The night air hit me, humid, heavy with the smell of recent rain. Texas in April. The grass was wet under my bare feet as I circled wide, using the oak tree for cover, then cut along the property line where the shadows were thickest. By the time I reached the fence, he was gone. I stood there for a long moment, shotgun up, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. The woods behind our property ran deep. 300 acres of mixed pine and oak that eventually connected to state land. Someone who knew what they were doing could disappear into that darkness and never be found. I checked the ground where he'd been standing. The soil was soft from the morning rain, but there were no footprints. Not a single impression. Like he'd floated there, or never existed at all. Except, I spotted it against the fence post, barely visible in the moonlight. A cigarette butt. Marlboro Red, filter still slightly damp. Fresh. Couldn't have been there more than an hour. I picked it up with the edge of my shirt, rolled it between my fingers. Real. Tangible. Evidence. He was real. And he'd been watching my house. I did one more sweep of the fence line, then the perimeter of the property. Nothing. By the time I got back inside, my feet were muddy and my heart rate had finally started to come down. I didn't wake Megan. What would I say? There was a man in our backyard, but he vanished like smoke? She'd think I was losing it. Hell, maybe I was. Construction safety consulting isn't exactly high-stress work, but the transition from ranger to civilian life had left scars I didn't always acknowledge. Sometimes I heard things that weren't there. Sometimes I saw movement in my peripheral vision that turned out to be nothing. But the cigarette butt was real. I sealed it in a plastic bag and put it in the kitchen drawer. Then I sat in the living room until 3 in the morning, lights off, shotgun across my knees. The windows faced the backyard. If he came back, I'd see him. He didn't come back. Not that night. The next evening, I told Megan I wanted to test the scope some more before Saturday's hunt. You and that new toy, she said, smiling as she loaded the dishwasher. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she had a smudge of tomato sauce on her cheek from dinner. I reached over and wiped it off with my thumb. Just don't stay up too late, okay? You've got that meeting in Round Rock tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. She threw a dish towel at me, and I caught it one-handed. Normal. Everything normal. That's what I kept telling myself. I set up earlier this time. 10:30. Positioned by the bedroom window with a clear view of the entire backyard. I'd moved the chair so I could sit comfortably, scope mounted on a small tripod I'd rigged up that afternoon. Megan had given me a look when she saw it. That's very tactical, she said. Old habits. Should I be worried? About what? She'd just shaken her head and gone back to her book. That was one of the things I loved about her. She knew when not to push. 2 hours of nothing. The oak tree swaying in the evening breeze. A raccoon investigating the trash cans, bold as brass until I tapped the window and sent it scurrying. The distant sound of traffic on Route 290, a low hum that never quite faded. Then 11:52 hit, and he was there. Same spot. Same posture. Same ball cap and jacket. Hands in pockets, face angled toward the house like he was reading a sign. I tracked him through the scope, trying to pull details. White male, somewhere between 30 and 50, beard visible under the cap's shadow. Average height, maybe 5'10". Average build. The kind of man who could disappear in any crowd. My throat felt dry. I didn't remember being afraid since Fallujah, but something about his stillness, the absolute certainty of his presence, like he had every right to be there, sent ice water through my veins. I cranked open the window. The sound seemed to echo across the yard. I see you, I called out. My voice carried clean in the night air. I'm armed. You should leave. Nothing. Not a flinch. Not a turn of the head. This is your only warning. The figure didn't move for another 30 seconds. I counted them, watching through the scope, my finger nowhere near the trigger because I wasn't about to shoot a man for standing on the edge of my property. But ready. Always ready. Then he turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Like he wanted me to watch him go. He walked into the tree line with measured steps, never looking back, and vanished between the pines. I was out the door before I finished thinking about it. Crossed the yard at a dead sprint, vaulted the fence, crashed into the woods. Branches whipped my face. Leaves crunched under my boots. I had my phone flashlight out, sweeping the darkness, but nothing. The woods swallowed sound like water. I could hear my own breathing, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Nothing else. He was gone. I stood there for 10 minutes, scanning, listening. Then I walked back to the house, more unsettled than before. He'd heard me. He'd known I was armed. And he hadn't cared. You want to buy a trail camera, Megan said the next morning, looking up from her coffee. The kind hunters use, motion activated. For wildlife documentation. Something like that. She studied my face for a long moment. Megan was good at reading people. It was part of what made her such a good dental hygienist, she said, knowing when a patient was about to panic. I wondered what she saw in me right now. Evan, what's going on? Nothing. I just want to see what's moving around the property at night. Might be deer. Could be something else. Something else like what? Coyotes, maybe. I heard something last night. The lie came easily. Too easily. But I wasn't ready to tell her the truth. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. I bought a stealth cam that afternoon from the hunting supply store off 71. Mounted it on the fence post where he'd been standing, angled toward the tree line. High-definition night vision, 3-week battery life, motion-activated trigger. If he came back, I'd have his face. Night 3, he came back at 11:58. The camera caught him arriving, standing for 22 minutes by the timestamp, and leaving the same way. Not once did he look at the camera. Either he didn't notice it, or he didn't care. The footage was grainy but clear enough. White male. Mid-30s to early 40s. Beard that looked a few weeks past trim. Ball cap with some kind of logo I couldn't make out. Dark jacket, dark pants, boots. I printed the best frames on our home printer and waited for Megan to get home from work. "How was the office?" I asked as she dropped her bag on the kitchen counter. She looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from dealing with other people's mouths all day. "Mrs. Patterson's root canal went long. 3 hours. My hands are killing me." She flexed her fingers, rolled her neck. "And Dr. Weber was in one of his moods again. You'd think a 50-year-old man could handle his own scheduling conflicts. Want me to talk to him?" "God, no. That would make everything worse." She managed to smile. "What's for dinner?" "I was thinking we'd order Thai." "God, yes. Pad Thai. Extra lime." We ate at the kitchen table, pad Thai for her, green curry for me, and I let the conversation flow around normal things. Her coworker Jamie's engagement to a guy she'd met on a dating app. My upcoming project in Round Rock, a new hospital wing that needed about 40 different safety certifications, whether we should finally fix the fence gate or just replace the whole section. She was halfway through her second glass of wine when I decided I couldn't wait anymore. I slid the printed photos across the table. "I need to show you something." Her eyebrows went up. "What's this? Some kind of—" The words died in her throat. I watched her face change, watched the color drain from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. Her fork clattered against the plate. Her wine glass trembled in her grip, and for a second I thought she was going to drop it. Her hands started shaking so badly that she had to set it down. "Meg?" "That's David." Her voice came out wrong, strangled, like she was being choked from the inside. "That's David Mercer." I waited. "My ex." She was still staring at the photos, unable to look away. "From before. From San Antonio. She stopped, swallowed hard, tried again. "He told me he'd kill anyone I was ever with. He said he'd wait however long it took." The air in the kitchen seemed to thicken. I could hear the wall clock ticking in the living room, counting off the seconds of silence. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked up at me then, and her eyes were wet. Terrified. But there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like guilt. "Because I thought he was gone. I thought I was free." I reached across the table and took her hand. It was ice cold. "Tell me everything." The beginning, as she told it, started in San Antonio 8 years ago. Megan was 24, fresh out of dental hygiene school, working her first real job at a clinic in the medical center. She was waitressing on weekends to pay down her student loans, a place called Tony's on the Riverwalk, the kind of restaurant where the food was overpriced and the tips were good. David Mercer was a regular. He came in every Friday night, always alone, always sat at the bar. Charming, funny, the kind of guy who remembered your coffee order and asked about your day like he actually cared. He was handsome, she said. Not movie star handsome, but real. Solid. He made me feel safe. I didn't say anything. Safe was a word that meant something different now. They dated for 4 years. It started good. Dinners out, weekends at the coast, the slow, comfortable rhythm of two people building a life together. Then controlling. He started checking her phone, questioning where she'd been, getting angry when she came home late from work. Then worse. "The first time he hit me, I convinced myself it was an accident," she said. We'd moved to the couch by then, the Thai food cooling untouched on the table. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea I'd made her, even though she wasn't drinking it. He was drunk. He'd lost his job that week, something about a disagreement with his boss. He apologized for a week straight. Bought me flowers every day. I thought it was a one-time thing. And it happened again. She nodded. Her eyes were fixed on some middle distance, somewhere beyond the walls of our house. It always happened again. Once every few months at first, then once a month, then every week. I got good at covering the bruises. Foundation. Long sleeves. I told myself it wasn't that bad. I told myself he loved me. How did it end? I showed up to work with a fractured wrist. She held up her left hand, flexed her fingers like she could still feel the old break. My manager, a woman named Rosa, she took one look at me and called the police. I didn't even have a choice. They took pictures, asked questions. David was arrested that night. And you testified. The DA said they needed me. Without my testimony, David would get a slap on the wrist. Community service, maybe probation. With me on the stand, they could put him away. She finally looked at me. I was terrified, Evan. I sat in that courtroom and I looked at him and I told them everything. Every punch, every kick. The time he threw me down the stairs and told the ER doctor I'd tripped. What happened to him? 18 months in county. Aggravated assault. Her voice went flat. When they dragged him out of the courtroom, he was screaming at me. In front of the judge, the lawyers, everyone. He said he'd find me. He said he'd wait 20 years if he had to. She paused. Drew a breath. He said he'd kill anyone who touched me. We sat with that for a while. Outside, the night pressed against the windows like something alive. After he got out, I moved. 3 times in 2 years. San Antonio to Dallas, Dallas to Oklahoma City to Austin. Changed jobs every time. Changed my name. Thornton was my maiden name from before. I thought I'd erased myself from that life. And you didn't tell me because I wanted it to be over. Her voice cracked. I wanted to be someone else. Someone who never knew David Mercer. Someone whose past didn't follow her everywhere. I thought if I didn't talk about it, it would stay buried. I looked at the photos on the table. The man in the ball cap, standing at our fence line like he owned the world. All right, I said finally. Tomorrow I'm going to find out everything I can about David Mercer. We're going to figure this out. What if he's not going to do anything? I took her hands, looked her in the eyes. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. That's a promise. The next morning, after Megan left for work, I started digging. David Mercer's social media presence was minimal. A Facebook account that hadn't been updated in 8 months, showing the usual progression of posts from just got out, new beginning, optimism to longer and longer silences. An Instagram with no posts, just a profile picture of a sunset over water. I tried LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, even some of the darker corners of the internet where people go when they don't want to be found. Nothing useful. Then I Googled his name and San Antonio together, and the world tilted under my feet. The San Antonio Express News headline filled my screen. Local man dies in single vehicle accident on Highway 281 Guam. I read the article twice. Then a third time. David Allen Mercer, 38, lost control of his vehicle on a bridge overpass during a rainstorm approximately 2 miles north of the Medina River. The car broke through the guardrail, dropped 40 feet, and was submerged in the river for 2 days before being recovered. Body found strapped into the driver's seat. Dental records confirmed identification. Funeral services were held at Willow Grove Cemetery the following Thursday. The article was dated 8 months ago. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. The man in my backyard, the man Megan had recognized with absolute certainty, had been dead for the better part of a year. I waited until Megan was settled on the couch with her tablet that evening, some home renovation show playing quietly in the background, before showing her the obituary. Her reaction was nothing like what I expected. No relief. No confusion. Just a slow shake of her head and a look in her eyes I hadn't seen before, something between fear and resignation. That's impossible. It's his obituary, Meg. Dental records confirmed the identification. There was a funeral. They buried him. I know what I saw. Her voice was hard now. Certain. That was David in those photos. I would know him anywhere. I spent 4 years watching him across the breakfast table. I spent 18 months looking over my shoulder waiting for him to come back. That is David Mercer in our backyard. People don't come back from the dead. She looked at me for a long moment. Her face was pale in the lamplight, shadows pooling under her eyes. David would. The Travis County Sheriff's Office was a low-slung building off Hamilton Pool Road, all beige brick and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. We sat across from a deputy named Reyes, young guy, maybe 30, with the careful patience of someone who'd heard every kind of story and was waiting to see which category ours fell into. "So you're saying this man has been on your property multiple nights in a row," he said, reviewing the printed trail camera photos I'd brought. "But you're also saying he's deceased." "We're saying there's someone who looks exactly like a man my wife used to know," I said, keeping my voice level. "A man who made death threats against her in open court. A man who's supposed to be dead." Reyes tapped his computer keyboard, squinting at the screen. "David Allen Mercer, San Antonio. Single vehicle accident, Highway 281, 8 months ago." He read for a moment, scrolling. "Confirmed deceased. Dental records matched by the Bexar County Medical Examiner. Case closed." He looked up. "I'm not sure what to tell you, Mr. Hartley. Dead is dead." "Then someone's impersonating him," Megan said. She was gripping the arm of her chair so hard her knuckles had gone white. "Someone who knows what he looked like, who knows about our history." "That's possible." Reyes spread his hands, the universal gesture of bureaucratic helplessness. "Could be a family member, could be someone who knew him. But until this person actually commits a crime, there's not much we can do. Standing on someone's property line isn't illegal. Looking at someone's house isn't illegal." "What about the threats?" I asked. "The death threats he made in court 6 years ago?" "That was..." Reyes checked his screen again. "Over 6 years ago, and the man who made those threats is dead. I can put in for increased patrols in your area, have a car come by a few times a night. But honestly, my advice is to document everything. Keep your cameras rolling. If he escalates, if he actually trespasses, damages property, threatens you directly, we'll have grounds to act." "So we just wait," Megan said. "We wait for him to do something." "I know it's frustrating, ma'am. Believe me. But the law requires..." "I know what the law requires." She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "Thank you for your time, Deputy." Outside, in the parking lot, she kicked a loose piece of gravel and let out a string of words I hadn't heard her use before. "So that's it? We just sit around waiting for him to break into our house. That's not what we're going to do." I unlocked the truck, held her door. "I know someone who can help." Len Walsh answered on the second ring. "Hartley." "Jesus Christ, how long's it been?" 3 years, maybe 4. "The Brennan thing? That was 4, easy. You still owe me a steak dinner for that one." His voice was exactly like I remembered. Rough gravel over warm bedrock, the kind of voice that made you want to tell him things. "How are you, man? How's the civilian life treating you?" "I've got a situation, Len. I need someone who can dig deep." There was a pause. I could picture him. Big guy, salt and pepper beard that he'd probably had since his 20s, the kind of face that made people trust him even when they shouldn't. We'd served together in the 75th Ranger Regiment, back when the world made a different kind of sense. He'd gone into private investigation after his discharge. I'd gone into trying to pretend the war never happened. "Talk to me," he said. I gave him everything. Megan's past, David Mercer, the nightly appearances, the obituary, all of it. "You think someone's impersonating a dead man?" "I think something's off. This guy shows up every night at the same time, stands in the same spot, doesn't react when I call him out. Either he's the world's most dedicated stalker, or there's something else going on. Send me what you've got." Photos, the obituary, anything about the accident. I'll see what I can find. Thanks, Len. Don't thank me yet. This kind of thing can get ugly fast. Sunday night. The figure returned, but this time he was closer. Not at the fence line, in the middle of the backyard. 50 yards from the house instead of 65. I tracked him through the scope, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out. He was holding something. I adjusted the focus, fighting the green blur of the night vision. A flat rectangle. Paper or cardboard. A photograph. He was holding up a photograph. He stood there for maybe 30 seconds, arm extended toward the house like he was showing it to us, making sure we could see. Then he dropped it on the grass and walked away. Same measured steps. Same controlled retreat into the darkness. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I walked out to retrieve the photo. It was our wedding picture, the one from the ceremony, taken just after we'd exchanged rings. Megan was laughing at something I'd said, her veil caught in the wind, joy radiating from every line of her face. Her face had been burned out with a cigarette. A perfect circle of ash where her smile used to be. Len called Monday afternoon with a name. Kyle Mercer, 34 years old, David's younger brother. I stepped out onto the back porch, away from where Megan was working in her home office. The breeze carried the smell of fresh-cut grass from somewhere down the road. Tell me about him. Last known employment was repo work in San Antonio. Not a nice guy from what I can gather. Couple of assault charges that got pleaded down. Restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. And here's the interesting part. Kyle was the one who identified David's body. He was the only family at the funeral. Where is he now? That's the problem. Kyle basically disappeared 3 months ago. His last known address was a trailer park outside San Antonio that burned down. Electrical fire, apparently. No forwarding address, no utility records, no credit card activity. He's either dead, living off the grid, or very good at not being found. I watched the tree line at the edge of the property. The pines swayed gently in the wind, green and peaceful and completely indifferent to human drama. You think it's him? The brother? It fits. Kyle blames your wife for David's downfall, the assault charge, the prison time, the spiral that ended with David driving off a bridge. He's finishing what his brother started. Thanks, Len. Keep digging. There's one more thing. His voice took on a careful quality I recognized from the old days, the tone he used when he was about to deliver bad news. I pulled some background on your wife. Megan Thornton, now Megan Hartley. Her story checks out, but there's a lot of sealed records around David Mercer's case. Not just the assault charge, he was also investigated for insurance fraud. Big money, over $300,000. Meg never mentioned that. Might not have been something she wanted to bring up, or might not have been something she knew about. He paused. Just keep your eyes open, brother. This thing might be deeper than it looks. That evening, I confronted her. We were in the kitchen, Megan chopping vegetables for a stir-fry while I pretended to read emails on my phone. I'd been waiting for the right moment all day. Maybe there wasn't one. Tell me about the insurance fraud. Her knife stopped mid-motion. She didn't turn around. Len dug into the records, I continued. There was an investigation. Something about staged accidents, fake claims. Over $300,000. Slowly, she set down the knife. When she faced me, her expression was complicated. Guilt and defensiveness, and something that might have been relief, all tangled together. David ran the operation, she said. Not me. He would stage car accidents. Fender benders, mostly, sometimes worse. File claims with the insurance companies. Pocket the money. He had a whole system. But you knew. I knew. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I lived in the house he bought with that money. I ate the food. I wore the clothes. I pretended not to see where any of it came from because I didn't want to see. Why didn't they charge you? Because I cooperated. After the assault case, investigators came around asking questions about David's finances. I told them everything, gave them statements, documents, whatever they wanted. They were building a fraud case, but then the assault conviction came through, and they kind of lost interest. David went away for hitting me, not for stealing. Who else knew about this? The insurance company, Sterling Continental. They lost a fortune because of David. She paused, running her fingers through her hair. There was an investigator, a man named Boyd something. He was obsessed with the case. I only met him once during a deposition. He sat across the table from me for 3 hours, asking the same questions over and over, trying to trip me up. What kind of questions? About the money, about where it went, about whether I knew more than I was saying. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He didn't believe a word I said. He kept saying I was too smart not to know. Like that was evidence of something. What happened to him? His bosses pulled him off the case. I heard later they fired him. Something about harassment, about refusing to let go. I felt almost sorry for him. She shook her head. I shouldn't have. A man like that, holding on to something for so long. That kind of obsession doesn't just disappear. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. She's not who she says she is. Ask about the money. I showed Megan the screen. Her face went pale, then hardened into something I'd never seen before. Cold. Alert. The look of a woman who'd spent years learning how to survive. That's not from Kyle, she said quietly. Someone else knows. Thursday night, the rules changed again. I came home from a site visit in Round Rock to find all 4 tires on my truck slashed. Not just punctured, slashed. Deep gouges that went all the way through to the rims, the rubber hanging in strips like dead skin. I stood in the driveway for a long time, looking at the damage. The message was clear. We're not safe here. Nothing is safe. Friday morning, Megan's scream brought me running outside with the shotgun before I remembered I was still in my boxers. She was standing by her car, shaking, pointing at the hood. A dead cat. A gray tabby. The stray that used to wander the neighborhood, the one Megan had started leaving food out for. Its throat had been cut, and someone had arranged the body with terrible care. Legs splayed, head angled toward the driver's side window like it was watching. "Oh God," Megan whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." I moved her away from the car, got her inside, called Len. Friday afternoon, I found boot prints in the dirt under our bedroom window. Deep impressions, probably size 11. Someone had stood there for a while. Long enough to watch us sleep. I photographed everything. Sent it to Len. Then I went inside and started planning. Saturday night, I set my trap. I told Megan we were going to her sister's place in Dallas, a cover story, since she doesn't have a sister in Dallas. She'd looked at me with questions in her eyes, but she hadn't argued. Some part of her understood what I was doing, even if we didn't talk about it. I put her up in a hotel near the Austin airport with strict instructions not to answer the door for anyone. "What are you going to do?" she asked as I set her bag on the hotel bed. "End this." "Evan, trust me." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." Then I went home and waited. The shed had good sight lines to the fence and most of the backyard. I'd cleared a space behind some old lawn equipment, stacked bags of mulch for concealment, propped open the window just enough for the rifle barrel. Night vision scope mounted and zeroed. Burner phone in my pocket, 911 already typed in, just waiting for me to hit send. 10 o'clock. Nothing but the wind in the trees. 11 o'clock. An owl hooted somewhere in the darkness. 11:47. A motion sensor tripped on the north side of the house. Not where the figure usually appeared. Different pattern, different approach. I slipped out of the shed, moving low and fast through the shadows. The north side of the house was dark, all the lights off like I'd planned. I could hear something, scraping metal, the soft grunt of effort. The front door. I came around the corner with the rifle up. A man was crouched at the door, working on the lock with some kind of pick. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s, clean-shaven, baseball cap pulled low. "Don't move." He spun. Wide eyes caught the moonlight. Genuine surprise, genuine fear. Not the figure from the trail camera. Not the man with the beard and the ball cap. "Wait," he started. His hand went for something in his jacket. I closed the distance before he could draw it, caught his wrist and twisted hard. I heard something snap. His grip, maybe a finger, and then I drove my shoulder into his chest. He went down hard on the porch, breath exploding out of him in a grunt. I got my knee on his back, wrenched his arm up between his shoulder blades. "Who are you? Get off me." "Wrong answer." I pressed harder, felt the joint approaching its limits. He yelped. "Kyle! My name is Kyle Mercer. Please, man, you're gonna break my arm." I eased up slightly. Not all the way, just enough to let him breathe. "You've been watching my house for 3 weeks, standing at the fence line every night. You killed that cat. You slashed my tires." I wanted her to be scared. He was crying now, tears and snot mixing on his face. "She deserves it. She destroyed him. My brother? She put him in prison and she ruined his life and he drove off that bridge because of her. Because of what she did to him." That's not an answer. I wanted her to feel what David felt, hunted, paranoid, waiting for something terrible to happen. I wanted her to know what it's like when your whole life falls apart because of someone else. I hauled him up, marched him toward the house. He didn't resist. Now that the adrenaline was fading, I could see him clearly. A small man, wiry, defeated. Not a killer. Not even close. Just someone lost in grief and rage, drowning in a hatred he didn't know how to process. I sat him down on the porch steps and stood over him, rifle angled toward the ground but not put away. "Tell me about David." Kyle looked up at me, confusion cutting through his fear. "What?" "Your brother. Tell me about him." "Why do you care?" "Because I'm trying to figure out if you're just a grieving idiot or someone I need to worry about." He was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, the fight went out of his shoulders. David was... He was always the strong one, you know? Our dad left when we were kids. Mom worked 2 jobs. David basically raised me. He made sure I had food, got to school, didn't fall in with the wrong crowd. And then he fell in with the wrong crowd himself. He made mistakes. Kyle's voice hardened. But he didn't deserve what happened to him. He didn't deserve to lose everything because some woman decided to throw him under the bus. That woman is my wife, and she testified about what he did to her. The bruises, the broken bones. That wasn't throwing him under the bus, that was telling the truth. She provoked him. No one provokes that. Kyle looked away. I could see him wrestling with something. The narrative he'd built in his head versus the reality sitting in front of him. "He called me," Kyle said finally. "From county, from the halfway house, from wherever he ended up. Always talking about her, about how she ruined him, about how he was going to make things right." He paused. "The night he died, the night of the accident, he called me. Said he was finally going to be free. Said he had a plan." "What kind of plan?" "I don't know. He was drunk, rambling. I told him to sleep it off, we'd talk in the morning." Kyle's voice cracked. "There wasn't any morning. They found him in the river 2 days later." We sat with that silence for a while. In the distance, a dog was barking. "There's more," he said. "I'm not the only one." "Explain." "A month ago, someone contacted me. I don't know his name. He said we had a common interest. Said Megan ruined his life too. He gave me her address, told me to watch her, keep her off balance. Kyle's voice cracked. He said he'd handle the rest. Handle the rest how? I don't know. I swear I don't know. He never told me the whole plan. But whatever he's planning, it's not just about scaring her, man. He wants to destroy her. The sheriff's deputies took Kyle away at 2 in the morning. Criminal trespassing, stalking, animal cruelty, breaking and entering, well, attempting to. He'd be arraigned Monday. I watched them put him in the back of the patrol car, a skinny man in handcuffs who looked younger than his 34 years. As they drove away, I called Len. I need the address for Boyd Napier, the insurance investigator. He's in Houston, right? Yeah, I've got it. What are you going to do? Have a conversation. Napier's apartment building was the kind of place that made you check your car doors twice. 3 stories of crumbling stucco near the Houston Ship Channel, surrounded by chain-link fences and dead grass. The kind of place where dreams went to die. I parked across the street and watched. 11 in the morning. Nothing. Noon. An elderly woman shuffled out with a shopping cart. 1:15. A thin, wiry man emerged from the front entrance. 50s. Gray hair buzzed short, the kind of manic energy that showed in the way he walked. Quick, jerky, like he was always late for something important. Boyd Napier. He was carrying a folder, thick, bulging with papers and documents. He crossed the parking lot to a dented Honda Civic, tossed the folder on the passenger seat, drove away. I followed him. Strip mall, storage unit, Kinko's. He spent an hour at the Kinko's, running the copy machine like his life depended on it. I caught up with him in the parking garage of his apartment building that evening. He was walking to his car, folder tucked under his arm, when I stepped out from behind a pillar. Mr. Napier, he stopped. His eyes went to my hands, checking for weapons, then back to my face, calculating, assessing. Do I know you? My name is Evan Hartley. You've been watching my wife. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. And underneath it, something that looked almost like satisfaction. So you're the new one, the Army Ranger. I wondered when you'd show up. You hired Kyle Mercer to harass us, gave him our address. The dead cat was a nice touch. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I stepped closer. Close enough that he had to tilt his head back to meet my eyes. I think you've been obsessed with my wife for 6 years. I think you got fired because you couldn't let go of a case everyone else had moved on from. And I think you're still trying to prove something. To your old bosses, to yourself, to anyone who'll listen. Napier laughed. It was an ugly sound. Too high, too wild. The laugh of a man who'd stopped caring what other people thought. You don't understand, he said. Your wife isn't a victim. She's a thief. She's a con artist. She set up David Mercer to take the fall for her crimes, and I'm going to prove it. The fraud investigation was closed 6 years ago. Because they fired me. His voice went bitter, acidic. Because I got too close. They didn't want to hear what I had to say. Too messy, too complicated, not worth the effort. But I've spent 6 years putting together what they wouldn't let me finish. Documents, emails, financial records. He held up the folder. Proof. Proof of what? That your precious wife was the mastermind. David Mercer was just the muscle, dumb muscle at that. She ran the whole operation from the beginning. She's the one who set up the fake accidents, managed the money, kept everything running. And when it started to fall apart, she threw David to the wolves to save herself. That's not true. No? Napier pulled a page from the folder, thrust it at me. This is an email from an anonymous account, sent from a public library in San Antonio, that gave David step-by-step instructions on how to run the scheme. I can prove Megan was the one who sent it. I looked at the page. technical jargon about IP addresses and routing information and timestamps. It might have meant something to someone who understood computers. To me, it was just words. "I'm going to expose her," Napier continued. "I'm going to destroy her reputation, her career, her marriage, everything she built on stolen money. And there's nothing you can do about it, because everything I have is legal." I met his eyes. He was waiting for me to threaten him, waiting for me to give him something he could use, proof of harassment maybe, or assault, something that would make him the victim. Instead, I said, "You're married, aren't you?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "Your ring." I nodded at his left hand. "Someone's been putting up with this obsession for 6 years. Must be hard on them." "My wife supports me. She understands what I'm doing." "I'm sure she does." I stepped back. "Enjoy your crusade, Mr. Napier. I'll be in touch." I drove back to Austin that night, picked up Megan from the hotel, brought her home. She was sitting on the edge of the bed when I got there, still dressed, like she hadn't slept at all. "It's over?" she asked. "Kyle Mercer is in custody. He was the one watching us." She closed her eyes. I watched the tension drain from her shoulders, years of it unwinding in a single breath. "Oh, thank God. There's more we need to talk about." Her eyes opened. "What do you mean?" I sat down beside her on the bed and told her about Napier, about his obsession, about the folder full of documents and his absolute certainty that she was the real criminal behind the fraud. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. The hotel room hummed with the sound of the air conditioning, impersonal and cold. "That email he mentioned," she said finally. "The one from the library. I didn't send it." "I believe you." "Do you?" She turned to look at me, and there was something fierce in her eyes. "Because I need you to believe me, Evan. I've spent 6 years with people looking at me like I'm guilty of something. Cops, lawyers, insurance investigators. Everyone assumes I must have known more than I said. Like a woman can't be a victim, she has to be a conspirator. I know you're not guilty." "How?" "You've known me for 2 years. You've known about this for 2 weeks." I took her hand. "Because I know who you are now. That's what matters." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said, "David had a friend, a woman named Pamela. She helped him set up the whole operation, the fake accidents, the shell companies, everything. When things fell apart, David blamed me to protect her." "Why would he protect her?" Megan turned to look at me. In the darkness of the car, her face was all shadows and angles. "Because he was in love with her. He always was. I was just convenient." It took Len 3 days to find her. "Pamela Bryce. She got married 5 years ago. New name, Pamela Napier." I was standing in the backyard when he called, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. "She's Boyd Napier's wife." That's what the marriage certificate says. And here's the kicker, Evan, according to financial records that I probably shouldn't have access to, Pamela Napier received 17 direct payments from the fraud scheme into a personal account she thought was closed. Timestamps match exactly with the period when David Mercer was running his operation. So Napier's wife is the actual criminal. And she's been using her husband to destroy your wife for 6 years? Every piece of evidence in that folder? Pamela probably helped him put it together. She's been pointing him at the wrong target the whole time. I found Napier at the same Kinko's 3 days later. He was at a copy machine in the back corner, duplicating more documents from his precious folder. Building his case, brick by brick, like a man constructing his own prison. I walked up and set a manila envelope on the machine. He looked at it, then at me. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by something that might have been anticipation. "What's this? Come to threaten me again?" "No threats, just information." "What kind of information?" The kind that changes everything. The kind you should have found 6 years ago if you'd been looking in the right direction. I tapped the envelope. Your wife's real history. He went very still. The copy machine hummed beside us, forgotten. I don't know what you're trying to. Pamela Bryce received 17 payments from the fraud scheme into an account she opened in 2012. I have timestamps. I have routing numbers. I have proof that she was the one sending instructions from that library computer, not Megan. Napier's face had gone the color of old paper. His hands were trembling slightly, though I didn't think he noticed. You're lying. This is some kind of trick to throw me off. Open the envelope. He stared at it like it might bite him. Then, slowly, he picked it up, undid the clasp, pulled out the stack of papers inside. I watched him read. Watched his eyes move down the first page, stop, move back up and start again. Like he couldn't process what he was seeing, like the words kept rearranging themselves into something impossible. This is impossible. His voice was barely a whisper. Pamela would never. She would. She did. She was the mastermind, Mr. Napier. Not David Mercer. Not Megan. Your wife. And when things started falling apart, she did what people like her always do. She found someone else to blame. No. He shook his head, kept shaking it. No, no, no. She wouldn't do this to me. We're partners. We built this together. She believed in what I was doing. She was using you. Every document in that folder of yours, every piece of evidence against Megan, Pamela probably helped you put it together. She's been pointing you at the wrong target for 6 years, keeping you busy while she stayed safe. You're wrong. But his voice had lost its conviction. He was looking at the papers in his hands like they were written in a foreign language. She loves me. Maybe she does. That doesn't mean she isn't a criminal. That doesn't mean she isn't a liar. He was silent for a long time. The Kinko's was nearly empty. Just us and a bored employee at the front counter, not even pretending to pay attention. Why? Napier asked finally. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to stop. Because I want you to leave my wife alone. Because this crusade of yours has hurt innocent people, and it's time for it to end. And if I don't stop, if I keep digging, then you'll find more of the same, more evidence pointing at your wife, more proof that you've been chasing ghosts. I leaned in slightly. Is that really what you want? To keep going down this road, knowing where it leads? He didn't answer. Just stood there, folder in one hand, my envelope in the other, looking like a man watching his whole world collapse into rubble. 6 years, I said quietly. 6 years of obsession. 6 years of hunting the wrong person. And the whole time, the real criminal was sleeping next to you. Get out. His voice cracked like old wood. Get out. Get out. I left him there. There was no victory in it. Just a hollow kind of satisfaction, and underneath that, something almost like pity. Napier destroyed his dossier that week. Len confirmed it. His apartment dumpster was full of shredded documents and melted hard drives. Whatever case he'd been building against Megan was gone. He called me, Len said when he reported in, late at night, drunk off his tail, kept asking how he could have missed it, how he could have been so blind. What did you tell him? That love makes people stupid, that he wasn't the first man to be fooled by a woman he trusted, and he wouldn't be the last. Len paused. He's not going to bother you again. Whatever fire was burning in him, it's out. Guy sounded like he'd aged 20 years in a week. Good. There's one more thing. I did some digging on Pamela Napier, or Pamela Bryce, or whatever she's calling herself now. She's got a history. 3 ex-husbands before Boyd. 2 of them ended up in financial trouble after the divorces. 1 declared bankruptcy. Pattern of behavior. Exactly. This isn't the first time she's used someone. It's just how she operates. Kyle Mercer pled guilty to the full slate of charges the following Monday: criminal trespassing, stalking, animal cruelty, breaking and entering. His public defender tried to negotiate for time served and probation, but the judge wasn't having it. 3 years in a state facility. I watched him get led away in handcuffs. He looked back at me once, just before they took him through the door. I couldn't read the expression on his face. Maybe hatred, maybe resignation, maybe something more complicated than either. And Pamela Napier? That was trickier. Len had evidence that could put her away for fraud. Insurance crimes have no statute of limitations in Texas. But using that evidence would mean depositions, trials, testimony. It would mean dragging everything back into the light. It would mean Megan on the witness stand again, answering questions about a life she'd worked for years to leave behind. We talked about it one night, sitting on the back porch with glasses of wine and the security system humming quietly in the background. The stars were out, more than you usually see this close to Austin, but our house was far enough from the city lights to matter. I could give everything to the district attorney, I said. Pamela would probably do 5 to 10, maybe more, if they decide to stack the charges. And I'd have to testify. Probably. You were part of the original investigation. They'd want your statement, at minimum. Megan was quiet for a while, swirling the wine in her glass without drinking it. The crickets sang in the darkness, and somewhere in the trees an owl was calling to another. When I testified against David, she said finally, I thought it would be the end. I thought once it was over I could start fresh, build a new life, become someone else. And instead? Instead, I spent the next 6 years waiting. Waiting for him to get out. Waiting for him to find me. Waiting for the other shoe to drop. She set down her glass. I don't want to wait anymore, Evan. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, fighting battles that should have ended years ago. So we let her go? We let her go. She turned to look at me, and in the moonlight her face was calm. Resolved. Maybe that makes me a coward. Maybe it makes me weak, but I'm so tired of being afraid. I thought about Pamela Napier, about the 3 ex-husbands and the trail of broken men she'd left behind, about how she'd used David, then Boyd, then Kyle, each of them a weapon pointed at someone else. Okay, I said, we let her go. Just like that? Just like that. I reached over and took her hand. But Len keeps the evidence, locked away somewhere safe. Insurance. In case she comes back? In case anyone comes back. I'm done being caught off guard. She smiled at that, the first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Old habits? Something like that. A new family moved into the Patterson place 2 miles down the road about a month later. The Pattersons had been older, retired teachers who'd kept to themselves. They'd sold up and moved to Florida, chasing grandchildren and warmer winters. Normal stuff. The wheel of life turning. Should we bring them something? Megan asked as we drove past the moving truck one Saturday morning. Welcome to the neighborhood? I'll make a casserole. You don't know how to make casserole. How hard can it be? It's just stuff in a dish. She laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in a while. Fine, I'll supervise. The casserole turned out better than expected. Tuna and noodles and cream of mushroom soup, my mother's recipe from an old cookbook she'd left me. Comfort food. The kind of thing you bring when you don't know what else to say. Saturday afternoon, we drove over with the dish still warm from the oven. The house was a 1970s ranch, brick, beige siding, a lawn that needed serious work. The kind of house that could be anywhere in Texas, anonymous and forgettable. A man was directing the movers in the driveway. Thin, wiry, 50s. Gray hair buzzed short, military style. My hand tightened on the steering wheel before I could stop it. What's wrong? Megan asked. Nothing. I forced my fingers to relax. Nothing. Let's go say hello. We walked up the driveway with the casserole dish. The man turned to greet us. Friendly smile, firm handshake. His grip was stronger than I expected. Name's Robert, he said. Robert Phelps. My wife's around here somewhere, probably still unpacking the kitchen boxes. You know how it is. Evan and Megan Hartley. We're just down the road. Welcome to the neighborhood. Appreciate that. Nice to know we've got good neighbors. His eyes lingered on me just a moment longer than necessary. You from around here originally? Georgia, way back. Been in Texas about 15 years. Military? Army, Rangers. Thought so. Got that look about you. He smiled again, and there was something behind it I couldn't quite read. I was Air Force myself, long time ago. Behind him, movers were carrying boxes inside. One caught my eye as they passed. Handwritten label in black marker. Pamila's Things. I looked at Robert Phelps, at his thin face and wiry build, at the way he was watching me, curious, attentive, waiting to see what I would do next. Nice to meet you, I said, keeping my voice even. Let us know if you need anything. Will do. And thanks for the casserole. My wife will appreciate it. We drove home in silence. Megan was looking out the window, watching the fields roll past. Everything okay? I asked. Just thinking. She turned to face me. Robert seemed nice. Yeah? But? No but, just keeping my eyes open. That night, after Megan was asleep, I checked the trail cameras. All clear. Perimeter sensors, green, motion detectors, silent. Then I picked up the night vision scope, the same one that had started all of this, 3 months and a lifetime ago, and walked out onto the back porch. The yard was quiet. The fence line was dark. The tree line stood silent against the stars, the pines swaying gently in the evening breeze. I raised the scope and scanned the property line. Nothing moved. Nothing waited. Just the familiar geography of home, peaceful and still. I didn't put the scope away. Some habits are worth keeping.